What the f am I looking at on screen right now? Trumperation, a game of skill. Dexamethasone, remdesivir, rapid test, hydroxychloroquine, X-ray, Regeneron. What is this video I'm looking at right now? Trump's COVID-19 treatment would have cost an estimated $650,000 out of pocket. Yeah, that's true. What a weird fucking picture to put up. I don't know if you guys can see this. Let me just switch screens real quick because this is one of the websites I was going to look at in a little while after we talk about some clips and stuff. What the fuck is happening on screen right now? This is on Yahoo Sports website. And we have this bizarre operation picture of Donald Trump. What the fuck is this? The first story I wanted to talk about is about a guy named Jacob Chansley. This is famously the QAnon Shaman. I'm sure you guys have heard the name. He was the guy that showed up at the January 6th events wearing like the shaman headdress with the horns and the face paint and the whole 9 yards. Jacob Chansley. This is a picture of him right here for the video audience. If you're watching, this is what he looks like. I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with what happened to him, so I'll just tell you. He got arrested after the events of January 6th, and he was sentenced not long ago to 41 months or 42 months, I believe, in jail for what he did for breaking into the Capitol. 41 months was his sentence, yeah. So he's going to be in jail for 41 months, including time served. So I think he got arrested sometime in February, so he'll probably be out sometime in 2025, somewhere in there, I'm guessing. Anyways, he gave an interview, a phone interview, to Channel 5 News on YouTube. So I wanted to pick out a couple of spots here, just see what he has to say. He's obviously QAnon, and he has some interesting ideas. Seemed incredibly personable, very nice guy, based on what I heard of the interview already. But Channel 5 isn't the only people that interviewed him. He was also interviewed by some other people. So I wanted to listen to a few different interviews with him. Let's start with the Channel 5 one. Check it out.
There's another faction within the ancient Egyptian hierarchy, and that would be like the people that worship Set. And Set is like the ancient Egyptian form of Satan. Okay, so Satan worship and Saturn worship are one and the same thing. And so there was this ancient form of Saturn worship in ancient Egypt, where what they would do is, instead of consuming large amounts of psychoactive plants, which they did do on occasion, but what they did more than anything is they used things like, say, Hebrew children or children of slaves to do these satanic ceremonies of blood sacrifice.
He's trying to establish the groundwork to justify his absurd, off-the-wall QAnon beliefs. Try to say this lightly. QAnon has this belief that they basically, they believe that the people at the top are part of a cabal, as they call it, and they're Satan worshippers. And they believe that these Satan worshippers hold blood sacrifices. They have to sacrifice kids to like Molech or Moloch or whatever the fuck, right? It's the Canaanite god that like people from the Bible used to sacrifice people to. Also known as Set, also known as Saturn, according to him, as he's saying here. So the claim is that they have to keep them alive and drink the blood that has the adrenochrome in it. So they have to scare the person to get adrenaline pumping, and adrenochrome is the byproduct of adrenaline. It's oxygenated, so it's been through the blood and it's been processed, and it's been oxygenated now. And they say if you drink adrenochrome, then it gives you this high like a drug or whatever. Is that true? No, it's not true at all. Adrenochrome is an easily purchased, easily accessed substance. You can buy it anywhere, you can harvest it or whatever. It's super easy to access, and it just gives you a headache if you consume it. What they're thinking of is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. In that movie, they mention adrenochrome. Completely fabricated. I mean, it's a movie. They weren't being serious. They weren't describing something real. But in the movie, they mention adrenochrome and how it's this drug and blah, blah, blah. If you wanted something like that, you would think it would just be adrenaline, right? You could just buy adrenaline. It's called an EpiPen. Just go buy an EpiPen. People don't use that as a drug either, as far as I know. I haven't heard anything about people using EpiPens as a drug. But none of that matters. Logic doesn't matter. What matters is they believe that Satanists have been sacrificing kids to Satan for millennia, since the dawn of time, and in that sacrifice, they harvest adrenochrome from them and they drink it. It's nonsense. There is no part of that that is true. But like I said, it doesn't matter. So let's continue listening to Jacob Chansley laying the groundwork to justify his absurd QAnon belief system. So far, he's told us that Satanists throughout history have been doing these sacrifice rituals or whatever.
And the whole idea is that they terrified their victims to the point to where their victims had an out-of-body experience. And in this out-of-body experience, their body filled with adrenaline, okay? And as their body filled with a bunch of adrenaline, they would end up killing the victim, sacrificing them to Saturn, okay? And in the process, their adrenalized blood would be drained and poured into like a chalice or something like that. And when they drank the blood, they were drinking something known as adrenochrome, because once the adrenalized blood was hit with oxygen, it changed from adrenaline to adrenochrome. Okay.
No. None of that is true. Adrenochrome is not used as a drug. No, people didn't try to get high off of it. Like I said, if you actually do drink adrenochrome, it'll give you a mild headache, and that's it. It won't get you high or any of that stuff. If you wanted to, you could get adrenaline. I mean, they sell it in the form of an EpiPen. It's ridiculously expensive, more expensive than it should be, but you can get it. It's super easy to access. Or, alternatively, if you chose, you could go skydiving. Runner's high if you want to. Get a runner's high. Go out running. I mean, people do that shit because they like the feel of the adrenaline pumping through their body. You don't have to do any of this stuff about sacrificing to Baal or Molech or Saturn or Set or any of that shit. You don't have to do any of that. You can just go skydiving or running or something to get that high that he's talking about. Simple as that. Adrenochrome does not do anything for you. It's nonsense. And as far as I know, you can buy it on eBay. It's really, really easy to access. Scientists actually studied adrenochrome back in the 50s to the 70s and determined after that point that it had no medical purpose, no medical use at all, and they just kind of dropped the experiments. It's not useful.
Adrenaline to adrenochrome. Okay, and if people don't believe that adrenochrome is real, all you got to do is watch Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, okay?
What I tell you, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, that's where he's getting his facts. From a fictional movie. How about that shit? He says it without a hint of irony in his voice.
Okay, and if people don't believe that adrenochrome is real, all you got to do is watch Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, okay?
It's real. It just doesn't do what you claim it does. It gives you a headache at best. Nobody would want to do that. Seriously, why would anybody do that? There are a ton of drugs out there that actually do something. Adrenochrome is useless. It's more useless than adrenaline is.
Vegas, okay? Type in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas adrenochrome scene. They would infiltrate the gene pools of certain ecosystems or certain nations, and then they would use these individuals as they infiltrated the gene pool. They would use their children as like higher level people in power, whether it be making them king or making them a prince or a duke or a sultan or whatever. So this is something that has been going on for quite some time. I mean, if you look into, how similar, I forgot his first name, but there was a certain Rockefeller that looks just like John Podesta, and John Podesta looks just like the singer from what's his name, from Linkin Park. I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Chester Bennington.
Chester Bennington, thank you. Yeah, they all look like strikingly similar.
Are you kidding me? You're like claiming there's some conspiracy theory because two people look similar to each other? I mean, everybody's got like a doppelganger out there, don't they? And they don't even look that similar anyways. If they were in different positions, like not facing the camera head on, I don't know that I would see that many similarities. What if they had different haircuts? I mean, is it the haircuts? What's so similar about them inherently? I mean, I guess I can see some similarities, but one has even darker skin than the other. This is just conspiracy theory all the way down.
Merkel in Germany looks just like Hitler. Barbara Bush looks just like Aleister Crowley.
Yeah, I'm not seeing either of those at all, like not even a little bit. And what does that have to do with anything anyways? Seriously, what does it have to do with anything? This guy's basically trying to tell us that elites have been interbreeding with each other for like a long time. Well, I guess rich people usually marry rich people, but it goes beyond that. This conspiracy goes beyond that. This is almost like a claim that these are like old spirits in new bodies. They keep switching from body to body. That kind of level of conspiracy theory. It's like lizard person level of conspiracy that he's talking about. And he hasn't given me a single convincing line yet. He's just telling us the conspiracy so far, essentially. I would love to hear some convincing piece of evidence for it. Anything.
What we're talking about is like a 6,000-year-old death cult that has been sacrificing children, like what was going on in Babylon and in the Canaanites, where they were sacrificing children to Baal and Moloch and all that stuff.
Evidence. Please, give me anything. I'll take any shred of evidence. Seriously, there is not a lick of evidence for what he's saying here. And there should be, based on how elaborate his description is. He gets really specific with some of these claims, and there isn't a shred of evidence for any of it. How did he get to the point where he believes this shit? How did this happen?
Okay, there's international bankers that own whole economies. There are international bankers that own whole countries and whole economies, okay? And these individuals are able to control and corrupt whole institutions of government, of corporations.
When you say they worship Saturn, are you talking about the planet?
Yes. Satan worship and Saturn worship are one and the same.
Okay, all of the Satanists that I know are only ironic Satanists. They're not theistic. They are atheistic Satanists. They don't even believe that God is real, let alone do sacrifices to anybody. A while back, Greg Locke actually made a claim that Hillary Clinton was the high priestess of the Satanic Church or something like that, which is hilarious because I actually know people at like the top of the hierarchy in the in the Church of Satan, who he seemed to have been talking about. It's an atheistic church. And the Church of Satan actually came out on Twitter and said, Hillary Clinton has never been one of our high priestesses. We only have one of those at a time, and the the position is occupied at the moment. It was really funny, and Greg Locke was made a fool of once again, of course, and he didn't even respond to it. Did he see it? Probably. I would guess he probably did. It was big news at the time in our circles, so I have to imagine he was called out for it and he knew he was, but he still believes this shit. You think the Church of Satan coming out and calling him a fool and saying we only have one high priestess at a time and Hillary Clinton's never held a position, you think that's enough to convince him that he's wrong? Of course not. It's Greg Locke, of all people.
When you say they worship Saturn, are you talking about the planet?
Yes. Satan worship and Saturn worship are one and the same.
Is it just because they sound similar, or is there a connection?
No. We're talking people that understand the intricacies of astrology, interconnectivity, or what is called quantum entanglement in the quantum field.
Oh God, he found the word quantum. Buckle up. Everybody who finds the word quantum does nasty things with it every fucking time. They always misuse the word quantum terribly. They never use it correctly. They don't even know what it means most of the time. Jesus Christ. Especially when that person is a QAnon conspiracy theorist.
Or the way that electromagnetic fields are nested. And when you contribute certain energies to a certain electromagnetic field, there are certain effects that happen within the ecosystem or within the electromagnetic nested ball of yarn, shall we say. Is he even using like the English language right now? Is he like structuring sentences correctly? Like none of that made any sense. I know those words. I know what each of those words mean. They don't go next to each other. I have no idea what he's even talking about. That is fucking weird. This next section of the interview, he was asked, what happened to the storm? QAnon's been saying that the storm was coming like any moment since
the inception, since the conspiracy movement started. This is Dave Hayes, aka the praying medic on the right, the bald guy, famously a very important Q interpreter. He's very high up in the QAnon movement. And this is him explaining what the storm is. 2019 is when this came out, May 2019. He's telling us in the next 12 months, from May 2019 to May 2020, the storm is going to take place. Of course it didn't, but here we are. Let's give this a listen real fast.
Q has often said, especially over the last 6 months, this is going to be the end of the D party. The end of the Democrat Party. Okay, now, if you are, average person listening, watching Q, like, what do you mean the end of the Democrat Party? The Democrat Party is not going to end. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And I'm going to explain to you how the Democrat Party is going to end. What we are going to see in the next year unrolled.
All right, here's his description. In the next year unrolled, this is how the storm is going to play out, according to him.
It is likely hundreds of members of Congress, most of them Democrats, some Republicans. All right, they're going to be arrested and they're going to be prosecuted for corruption.
That's basically what the storm is. It's just where a bunch of politicians are arrested for corruption, and even he gets into pretty specific details in this. He names specific people, specific Republicans that are going to be arrested for their part in the cabal, blah, blah, blah. And he backs this up by claiming, this happened right after midterms, and some politicians dropped out and didn't run for re-election after the midterms in 2018. And he was like, see, they dropped out because the storm's on its way, and they knew they were going to be prosecuted, so they quit, so on and so forth. Retroactively going back and finding evidence to back up some conclusion that he already held in the first place. So that brings us back to Jacob Chansley. The question that was asked of Jacob Chansley was January 6th supposed to be the storm? And it failed. The answer is yes. January 6th was supposed to be the storm. And yes, it did fail. So how do you explain that? He said, what is the storm? That was the question that he just asked Jacob Chansley. Give it a listen.
First of all, I think that we're in the midst of the storm with all of this COVID stuff. I think that we're in the midst of it right now. If you think about the damage that's being done to our economy, to our culture.
Now, the storm was supposed to be one single explosive event that took place on one day where all of these people were arrested and tried in military tribunals, blah, 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 blah. It's not the kind of thing that you can be in the middle of for some period of time. We're in the middle of the storm for the next year, This is COVID. He's suddenly talking about it in abstract terms. That's not what it was ever intended to be. According to the QAnon books and writings that have come out, the storm was a single event that was going to be so big, nobody could deny that that's exactly what it was. Let's listen to his description of the storm again.
First of all, I think that we're in the midst of the storm with all of this COVID stuff. I think that we're in the midst of it right now. If you think about the damage that's being done to our economy, to our culture, to our national identity, to the truther movement, as it were.
The storm was supposed to be their victory over evil. It was supposed to be the QAnon victory over evil, not evil's victory over QAnon, which is what he's describing right now. I'm not even sure where he's going with this. He knows he's lying right now.
I think that it's important that people realize that people now know about child and human trafficking, and they also know about the hundreds of deep underground military bases in the United States and all over the world. They also know about things like spiritual parasites and the way that psychic vampires play a role. That's what these Satanists are. They're like psychic vampires.
Okay.
They're like demonic possessed people. That's part of what black magic is you allow your body to be like a vessel for a demonic spirit. People know about the deep state. They know about how blackmail is used in the deep state to cover up the crimes against humanity, how it's all these networks, the pedophile networks and the mockingbird media is used to cover up the truth about this breakaway civilization that's going on underneath our feet.
Breakaway civilization. Did you catch on to all that? So many buzzwords, so much loaded language, so many cliches mixed in here. He's talking about a breakaway civilization. I don't know if you caught, but a moment ago he said breakaway civilization, and before that he said underground military bases. This is an overarching belief system that he has, okay? He believes the military has these underground bases that are breakaway civilizations completely separate from the above ground world, I guess you could call it, and they have technology that's hundreds of years more advanced than what we have right now. That's his belief. I mean, he didn't touch on it in this interview very much, but that is what he believes because he touched on it in another interview that we may watch in a couple of minutes.
Networks, the pedophile networks and the mockingbird media is used to cover up the truth about this breakaway civilization that's going on underneath our feet as we speak. People are being neuro-linguistically programmed with the truth, but unfortunately the movement has become fragmented.
Okay, neuro-linguistic programming, aka NLP, is what it's called. It's bullshit. People claim that NLP is this secret to subliminal messaging where you can brainwash people while you're standing in front of them. Doesn't work that way. This is a common belief with QAnon too. They believe that, the media is neuro-linguistically programming you, so if you watch it, then you will be brainwashed. That's why they avoid mainstream media, so they're not brainwashed like the rest of us. That's not how neuro-linguistic programming works. In fact, I would go as far as to say it's nearly a pseudoscience. Neuro-linguistic programming is nearly. There is some basis to it, but it is not what people want you to think it is. Jehovah's Witnesses had this deep obsession with if you talk to an apostate, even talk to him for a second, they'll get into your mind and they'll manipulate you and then you're lost forever. They will transfer the disease from their body to your body. Just talking to them, even looking at them, you can transfer the disease, the mental disease that they carry in them from Satan. They'll transfer it to you. So don't look at them. If you're passing them on the street, look at your watch, look at your shoes, look at anything but their eyes. Don't talk to them, don't look at them, don't nothing. And that's kind of the same idea that the QAnon shaman has about neuro-linguistic programming. It's the idea that if you listen to what people are saying or watching the media, which he believes are neuro-linguistically programming people, then you will be brainwashed. And even if you are fully aware of what's happening, it doesn't matter. You'll be brainwashed instantly. That's the kind of idea that he has in his head. That's not how it works. That's not how it's ever worked. If it was that easy, we could sit all of these QAnon people down in a chair and do the NLP thing and deprogram them just like that. That's simple. But there's no convincing him. There's no convincing him otherwise, sadly. He went on this right-wing radio show, basically, to talk more. This is a second interview, so give this one a listen.
I understand you served in the Navy for a couple of years. You had an honorable discharge in 2007. Why did you decide to leave the Navy?
Well, I got a general discharge under honorable conditions.
Okay.
And it was because I refused to take the anthrax vaccine. So, like I told Joe, I was refusing vaccines before it was cool.
Has it ever been cool? Of course it hasn't. You're a fool if you are anti-vax. You are a fool. Get the fucking vaccines. There's another clip I wanted to watch. Check this one out.
This is something else I'd like to mention. These deep underground military bases, okay, they are essentially a breakaway civilization because they have used billions upon billions of dollars to technologically grow without the knowledge of the public. And so for every year that human civilization progresses up on the surface, the military-industrial complex, these deep underground bases, they have progressed in many cases like 5 to 10 years sometimes 10 to 20 years as far as technology is concerned. Okay, and if you realize that they've been doing this ever since like the 50s, then where they are at technologically right now is like several hundred years ahead of where we are technologically right now. And when the truth about these patents ends up surfacing to our civilization up here, we're going to see a whole new world, okay? Far beyond most people's imagining.
Why would the military go underground and create a breakaway civilization in the first place? First of all, they would never get sunlight. And second, saying it's a breakaway civilization is essentially saying that they are completely separate from the rest of society above ground. They have zero contact with the outside world. If it's a breakaway civilization, they don't deal with the outside world at all. If they did, then they would transfer technology. There would be trade. There'd be trade of technology, right? But his claim is that the military is underground in underground military bases with several hundred years more advanced technology, and they're completely separate from the above ground world. Does it really get more bizarre and disconnected from reality than this? How do you even come to these conclusions? How did he conclude that there's a breakaway civilization underground? There's no evidence for that. None. How did he get there? And a more important question than that, how do we get him out of that headspace? Him and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of others. How do we get them out of this headspace? How do we help them out of this situation? Especially when they seem to believe we have brainwashing powers where if they look us in the fucking eye, we brainwash them. How do we help somebody like that? I am at a loss.